Moving on to a look at your aviation forecast. For Saturday morning, we expect IFR conditions along the immediate north slope coast as well as northern portions of the Seward Peninsula and right at the mouth of the Yukon River, stretching westward into the Bering Sea as well as down through most of the Aleutians. Also IFR conditions through Prince William Sound and much of the northern Gulf. MVFR conditions expected Saturday morning for the Panhandle as well as the Alaska Peninsula. For Saturday afternoon, we'll see some improvement along the coastal sections of the north and west parts of the state as IFR conditions are relegated more offshore. But those IFR conditions will continue through the day on Saturday from St. Lawrence Island south through the Bering Sea and into the entire Aleutian chain. Also, Prince William Sound area, the eastern Kenai Peninsula, and areas east of there through the northern Gulf Coast. Panhandle looks to improve to VFR conditions for Saturday afternoon with VFR over most of the mainland area. For Sunday morning, we see those IFR conditions returning to the North Slope and the immediate portions of the West Coast, as well as coming into Cook Inlet, the northern Alaska Peninsula, and the Bristol Bay area. Still, IFR conditions continuing through the Bering Sea and the Aleutian chain, as well as the northern part of the Gulf, stretching from the eastern Kenai Peninsula through Prince William Sound and over to about Yakutat. MVFR conditions returning to the Panhandle, and also expecting MVFR conditions in the Alaska Range on Sunday morning. For Sunday afternoon, we do see quite a lot of improvement like we saw on Saturday as well. Could see some areas right around Utqiagvik with IFR conditions, as well as that western tip of the Seward Peninsula, stretching through the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Also IFR still hanging around for the eastern portion of the Kenai Peninsula, as well as Kodiak Island for Sunday afternoon. MVFR conditions, though, for Prince William Sound and points south and east through the Panhandle. Pass conditions on Saturday. Anaktuvuk Pass and Adigan Pass both VFR on Saturday. Lake Clark and Merrill Passes both also VFR, but we expect some afternoon thunderstorms at those passes on Saturday. Rainy Pass, VFR with thunderstorms on Saturday as well. Windy Pass, same story, VFR, but afternoon thunderstorms in the area. Isabel Pass likely to be MVFR through most of the day on Saturday with some afternoon thunderstorms. And Mentasta Pass, IFR in the morning, improving to VFR in the afternoon. Doesn't look like any thunderstorms for Mentasta Pass on Saturday afternoon. Tanita Pass, MVFR in the morning, improving to VFR in the afternoon with thunderstorms once again in the afternoon. And Portage Pass, MVFR through the day with afternoon thunderstorms, but through the whole day there will be IFR conditions right at that east entrance to Portage Pass, so be careful if you're headed through Portage Pass on Saturday. Chilkoot and White Passes, both VFR conditions for Saturday. Freezing levels on Saturday morning, we've got our main warm air coming up from the Pacific Ocean with 12,000 foot freezing levels across most of the Aleutians, 8,000 feet over most of the mainland as well as the Panhandle. Icing for Saturday, our main area of icing is going to be isolated moderate above 10,000 feet for the Panhandle. There's also an area of isolated moderate over the Arctic Ocean that's probably going to just scrape the North Slope coast. That's going to be between about 6,000 feet and 10,000 feet. Jet stream winds, our main jet's going to be around a low near the Panhandle. So on the east side of that low, we have 85 to 100 knot winds out of the south. And on the southwest side of that low, about 75 to 95 knots out of the northwest. A small secondary jet streak around a low pressure system over the western interior, about 60 knots around the northwest and south side of that low. 9,000 foot winds. We have that same low pressure system near the Panhandle, 25 to 35 knot winds around the south side of that low, and then also 20 to 35 knot winds between high pressure and low pressure over the Aleutians. For 3,000 foot winds, 20 to 25 knots on the south side of a low near the Panhandle, and 25 to about 40 knots across the Aleutians. That's going to be out of the southeast. Turbulence, just one small area over the western Aleutians below 3,000 feet.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Good evening and welcome to Alaska Weather. Thank you for joining us. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. We've got that phone number and website down at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to call that number anytime if you need a forecast on the fly for your area. That's 1-800-472-0391. If you have internet access, you can also visit us at weather.gov/Alaska for a specific forecast by typing in your city and state or zip code on the website. And if you ever have any comments for us, feel free to email us anytime at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. Once again, we don't have any hazards out for today, so we'll skip right to fire danger. Not a lot of change from yesterday. Still high fire danger for much of the area just north of the Brooks Range, portions of the Brooks Range itself, but mostly the Yukon Flats area and stretching a little bit further south from there along the Canadian border. We do have a small area of extreme fire weather for the Yukon Flats where it's been dry, but we're being saved at this point by the fact that it hasn't been too hot to continue to dry those fuels out even more in that area. Despite that high fire danger that we're seeing, it could be a lot worse. So far this year, we haven't seen a lot in the way of wildfire activity across the state. This graph is showing the last almost 30 years of wildfire activity of total acreage burned before July 10th. So that's today, so the summer up to this point. And that turquoise circle around 2020 this year shows less than 250,000 acres of land burned by wildfires this year. Compared to last year, by this time, we saw more than 1 million acres of land burned by those wildfires. So not too bad so far this year. We will keep hoping that that maintains its course and it doesn't end up turning into something bad like last year. Looking at our satellite imagery for today, we can see a low pressure system with that counterclockwise swirl in the northern Gulf, bringing a lot of moisture into the panhandle today. We can also see another front laying over the Aleutians this afternoon, bringing some rain there. But then the story is the dry area over much of the Bering Sea. That's with high pressure in command. So clear skies and dry conditions for the Bering Sea and much of the west coast today. For today's weather, we do have that low pressure system we could see in the satellite imagery in the northern Gulf, and that's going to be bringing some rain into the panhandle. We also have a number of low pressure systems stretching from about south central east into Canada with a trough stretching across all of those low pressure systems. That's going to be what's helping to spark those thunderstorms this afternoon that we're expecting across the southern interior, and then also for the northwestern interior up near the southern Brooks Range. We have that occluded front connected to a low pressure system that's moving into the Aleutians, and that's going to be bringing rain into the islands. But we can clearly see, as we saw in the satellite imagery, that high pressure over the Bering Sea, bringing those clear skies. But with that, we will see some fog today, and as well as into tonight for parts of the west coast, including the northern Seward Peninsula down to St. Lawrence Island and the immediate Yukon Delta areas. Also possible to see some fog today along the north slope with high pressure in command up there as well. For tonight, we'll see those thunderstorms taper off, but showers continuing through south central and east into the panhandle. High pressure still in command over the Bering Sea with continuing fog over the west coast as well as north slope areas. Could also see some fog tonight over the Pribilofs. Low pressure still moving into the Aleutians and bringing a weakening occluded front into that area for showers and rain. And that low pressure in the northern Gulf continues to weaken, but we'll continue to see some rain associated with it tonight as well. For Saturday, not a whole lot of change in our low and high pressure systems. We still have low pressure over the southern mainland, and that's going to be the main focus for thunderstorms again on Saturday afternoon. It's going to focus the thunderstorms a little bit further west. So we'll see them stretching from the western interior south to about the northern Alaska Peninsula. Also a chance of thunderstorms just north of the eastern Alaska range, maybe near the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains. So showers elsewhere through south central, east to about Yakutat, and then rain for the Panhandle again on Saturday. We still have that weakening occluded front hanging out over the Aleutians on Saturday, so we'll see some rain and showers associated with that. But in general, for the Bering Sea, high pressure still in command, so we'll continue to see fog in those same favorable areas along the west coast as well as the North Slope for Saturday. Sunday's weather, looking at low pressure changing a little bit over the mainland, developing over the central mainland, and weakening some over the YK Delta. So we'll see thunderstorms stretching from about the eastern mainland southwest into the YK Delta and northern Alaska Peninsula areas for Sunday afternoon. That low pressure in the northern Gulf has pretty much dissipated at this point, with a ridge of high pressure centered just offshore the Panhandle, but it won't completely save the Panhandle from some showers on Sunday. A trough stretching from the Aleutians into the central Gulf will bring some showers there, although we will see a break in the showers for a lot of the Aleutians on Sunday. So some dry weather headed that way as that high pressure in the Bering actually starts to take command over those central and western Aleutians. With that high pressure, we'll continue to see some fog for those favorable locations on the west coast, as well as some continuing fog along the north slope, especially around the Utqiagvik area. Taking a look at temperatures for Saturday morning, we'll see upper 40s to low 50s across a lot of the area, including the Panhandle into south central, where we could see some mid 50s for Saturday morning. Still upper 40s for the central interior and the west coast, with some cooler temperatures about lower 40s to mid 40s for parts of the YK Delta, and then temperatures right around freezing for the immediate north slope, Utqiagvik at about 31 degrees there. Temperatures for Saturday morning in the low to mid 40s for the Aleutians as well. For Saturday afternoon, we'll see temperatures warm but not hot at all, where we'll have some highs in the mid to upper 60s across the central interior, as well as parts of the YK Delta. Temperatures in the low to mid 60s for south central, and just upper 50s to low 60s for the Panhandle. North of the Brooks Range, we're looking at temperatures in the mid 40s to about 50 for the flats, and then upper 30s to around 40 for the immediate north slope areas. Sunday morning, temperatures fairly similar to what we saw or what we will see on Saturday morning, with upper 40s to around 50 degrees for the Panhandle, as well as into the south central area and the Alaska Peninsula. A little bit cooler in the Aleutians with mid 40s, as well as cooler for parts of the west coast where they're not likely to break out of that fog. So only temperatures around 40 for Sunday morning in areas with all that fog, right around freezing for the north slope. Taking a look at Sunday afternoon, a little bit warmer, temperatures reaching possibly the mid 70s into the Yukon Flats as well as the Yukon Delta. Upper 50s to around 60 for the Panhandle and mid 60s for South Central.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider, and joining me today is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. And Cindy, we hear a lot about tsunamis in the news, probably a lot more than we used to, but let's remind everybody, what is a tsunami?
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sure.
Tsunami is basically, it's really simple. It's just a disturbance in the water column. So the entire water column from the seafloor to the sea surface is disturbed by something major. Usually a major earthquake. But it can also be a volcanic eruption, even an asteroid. Landslide is especially dangerous.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in my bathtub and I drop a bath toy, that could be a bathtub tsunami.
It is absolutely a bathtub tsunami.
Okay, very good. So Alaska is one of the states, or maybe the state, with the greatest amount of coastline. So tsunamis are a pretty major risk here in Alaska. Who is most at risk?
Yeah, Alaska is significant. We actually make most of the Pacific's tsunamis.
Wow, okay.
On the Aleutian Trench. And it's where the Pacific plate is subducting underneath the American plate. And we produce some very large, great quakes. And of course, the most at risk is the Aleutian Trench.
Okay.
But that extends into south central Alaska as well. They're at huge risk. And then southeast Alaska's risk is really mostly landslide focused.
Okay. Are there any places along the Alaskan coastline that don't have a tsunami risk, or at least a very, very low risk?
Absolutely. The Bering Sea's risk is very low, and the Arctic's risk is very low as well.
Okay, so when we're talking about tsunami dangers, those are places that need to be monitored, but probably not really.
No, I
Not a
mean,
big
I
deal.
won't say never.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know
You can't.
better.
Science knows better.
Right. So,
Very good.
near to never.
Okay. Well, let's just say you're on the coast anywhere in Alaska. What are warning signs that tsunami dangers are threatening you right now?
This is super important because Alaska's greatest risk, especially out on the Aleutians and South Central, is a near-field tsunami, and then of
Okay.
course the landslides in Southeast. It's even more intense because we
So
can't.
shorter warning times.
No warning time.
Okay.
The earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
And that is the most important thing for anybody to remember. The water can arrive in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes, wow.
Yeah, at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, we need to get the warning out in 5 minutes. So for those near-field tsunamis, it's the earthquake is the warning. So
Okay.
if you feel shaking,
Okay.
and of course the first thing you do is drop, cover, and hold,
Right.
and you need to start counting
Okay.
slowly to 20.
The right way. How do you do that?
Oh, I teach kids to do it with their favorite things. So
Okay.
1 chocolate, 2 chocolate, 3 chocolate, but you
Chocolate's
can
good.
count anything you like.
Okay.
And if you're thinking of something happy, that helps.
Okay.
Especially helps kids, but it'll help your
So
psyche.
you don't speed up because you're getting stressed out. I see.
Right. It actually lowers your heart rate.
Interesting.
You know, so
Okay.
if you think of something you love and practice that. So you're in an earthquake, you're under the table, you're next to the ocean,
Okay.
right?
Right.
This is important if you're next to the ocean.
Okay.
If you're not next to the ocean, don't worry about it. Just stay in place under cover.
And you're talking about a mile, a quarter mile? What's close?
A mile, even a couple miles.
Okay.
You know, our rule of thumb used to be a mile inland was safe, but the last few tsunamis have taught us otherwise.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, in Japan we had inundation up to 10 miles.
Right.
So,
Okay. And that was a big quake.
That was a big
So you
quake.
have a quake, you're counting slowly to 20.
to 20.
What's next?
And if you get to 20 and it's still shaking, you need to evacuate.
Okay.
And that is, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because you're
That's a big quake.
evacuating in a live event that's still shaking. You know, 1964 shook for 4.5 minutes. Indonesia shook for 12 minutes.
Wow. Right.
Japan, I think, shook for 6. I'm not sure of that, but it was long. Anyway, more
Right.
than 20 seconds.
And that's a sign of a very major earthquake, the worst.
Well, 20 seconds is a magnitude 7, so that's
Okay.
not the worst. But what a magnitude 7 can do is trigger a landslide.
Okay.
And those landslides might be a submarine landslide, so you won't see it, you won't hear it, you won't know it, and then the water's moving.
Okay.
So that's really, really, really dangerous. That's what happened in 64 first. Seward, Valdez, Whittier all had landslides first.
Okay. And when you're talking about the water is a warning sign too. What happens with the water that gives you a very easy visual sign that something's changing?
Not guaranteed. It might go out. It might go way out really fast enough to leave the fish behind. But that's not guaranteed. It might just be a fast flood instead.
Okay.
So either way, if it's acting like a super fast rising tide, faster than a tide should rise,
Right.
get out of there.
Okay.
And if it goes out really fast, get out of there.
Yeah.
You know, we lost a lot of lives because people will go check out the new tide pools or
Sure.
pick up fish or shells or, you know, so, and it should feel weird.
Right.
You know, it should be weird.
So pay attention to those natural warning signs and how you feel, because those are maybe the only clues you have.
Right, and you know, sound also. You can hear a tsunami. It'll sound like a roaring train, maybe.
Okay.
Or it might sound silent because the water's been pulled out.
Right.
And that's pretty weird. Imagine camping
Yeah.
at night
Yeah.
near the beach, and all of a sudden you don't hear the ocean anymore.
That would be different.
That would be weird. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you also might hear blowing bubbles, and that's actually from the pressure that's blowing the air out from the sand grains, rock grains. So if you hear blowing bubbles, that's a little weird.
Okay.
Or clinking rocks, you know, like a rain stick. So those are the sound signs. So the visual is rushing in or rushing out, and roaring especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to get people and keep people aware of what the tsunami warning signs are and what their risks are around Alaska. And there's a website that can help them do that. Where can they go online to get more information for their school, their home, their church, their business?
Oh, there's several. The National Tsunami Warning Center has a website as well, and the easiest way to look that up is just NTWC.
NTWC.
The URL is not intuitive at all.
Okay.
There's also ready.alaska.gov. The state of Alaska has a lot of helpful stuff. Preparedness kits. They have everything you need to get ready.
Okay.
And then for teachers and others, there's a wonderful curriculum called Alaska Tsunami Education Program.
Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Okay.
And that's AKwx.
AKwx. Okay, very good. Those are really good tips to get more information and search that out and help your own community stay safe with the threat of tsunamis around Alaska. Next time we come back and talk to you some more about the Tsunami Ready program and get more in depth and how people can learn more about the risks and what to do here in Alaska. So thank you for joining us today, Cindy. And next time on Alaska Weather Facts, more on tsunamis around Alaska. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for a look at your marine forecast for this weekend. Starting out with the sea ice edge, we're not seeing a lot of change compared to the last few days. We do continue to see some thinning of that ice along the immediate coast between Utqiagvik and Prudhoe Bay. That's the area where we still have the thickest ice right along the coast anywhere in the state. We do expect that still to become marginal over the next 5 days or so. Taking a look at the marine forecast for the southeast area on Saturday, fairly light winds out of the south and southeast with some westerly flow along the North Gulf, just 10 to 15 knots across the board. Seas also pretty low, 3 to 4 feet along the Gulf, 6 feet in the southern Gulf off Craig, just 2 to 4 feet for the inside waterways. For Sunday, winds still consistently pretty low, about 10 knots out of the south, 20 knots up in the Lynn Canal area, though, out of the south. Seas 4 to 5 feet over the Gulf and about 2 to 4 feet for the inside waterways on Sunday. Saturday across South Central, generally light winds again, 10 to 15 knots out of the south. Seas around 3 to 4 feet for the Gulf, 2 feet for Prince William Sound, and about 3 feet for Cook Inlet. Sunday, pretty consistent with the winds, a little bit more southeasterly, 10 to 15 knots still though. Seas increasing just ever so slightly over the Gulf to about 4 feet, still 2 feet for Prince William Sound and 2 to 3 feet for Cook Inlet on Sunday. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas on Saturday, we've got relatively light winds still below small craft advisory criteria, 10 to about 20 knots. For the north side near Kodiak Island and the north side of Alaska Peninsula, we'll see winds out of the west and southwest. Some easterly flow, though, on the south side of Sand Point, and some northerly flow on the north side of Cold Bay and False Pass, with low pressure in the northern Gulf and high pressure in the Bering Sea for Saturday. For Sunday, a little bit more consistent with the winds also coming down a little bit, so about 10 knots out of the south. Still some northerly flow, though, in the Bering Sea, relatively light at about 10 knots still. 3 to 6 foot seas for the Gulf and very small seas, 1 to 2 feet for Bristol Bay and the Bering Sea. For the Aleutians, easterly flow about 20 to 25 knots for the entire chain on Saturday. Seas 8 to 10 feet across the board as well. Seas a little bit lower on the north side of the Unalaska area, about 4 feet, but increasing to 10 feet as we get into the western Aleutians for Saturday. Looking ahead into Sunday, winds coming down just a little bit and seas along with them. So we'll see winds out of the northeast and east about 15 to 20 knots. seas in that 4 to 7 foot range across the board. For the west coast on Saturday, generally northerly flow, shifting a little bit northwest or northeast, depending on exactly where you are, 10 to 20 knots with those lightest winds in Norton Sound, about 10 knots. Strongest winds about 20 knots out of the north, just south of St. Lawrence Island. Seas ranging from about 2 to 4 feet across the west coast for Saturday. As we look ahead into Sunday, not a whole lot of change with the winds, still 10 to 20 knots. Seas also not a ton of change, 2 feet in Norton Sound and about 3 feet for most of the Bering Sea for Sunday. For the Arctic coast on Saturday, north slope winds out of the north and west about 10 knots. For the Chukchi Sea coast, about 15 knots out of the northeast and 20 knots out of the north for the Bering Strait area. Outside of the places still seeing that ice, we'll see seas 3 to 5 feet on Saturday. For Sunday, lighter winds along the north slope, just 5 to 10 knots, increasing a little bit for the Chukchi Sea coast to 15 to 20 knots out of the north and 20 knots out of the north in the Bering Strait area. Reviewing what we're looking at for tonight's weather, we've got thunderstorms this afternoon that are going to be tapering off tonight across the southern interior. We'll still see some showers in that area though, as low pressure remains over that area with a trough stretching from the south central eastward into western Canada. Low pressure decaying but remains in the northern Gulf, bringing some rain into the Panhandle. Thanks so much for watching Alaska TV Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.